Love, love, love till I feel the breath of the Spirit flowing in me.
Hello, welcome to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is John Hendricks. He's the CEO of Afford Group Housing Development and the founder of I Choose Life, a charity. Welcome, John. It's great to have you in the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, Geraldine.
Yeah, could you explain a bit of your title of the two groups that you've one founded and one is a CEO of?
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's nice to be back on Spirit of Life. It's been a few years since I've been on Spirit of Life, so it'd be good to speak about it in a bit more detail again. Mm-hmm. So the founding of I Choose Life was about 8 years ago, and I wanted to give back some of the income, some of the things that I had experienced in my life back to others. And I've been blessed and fortunate to be able to open up a charity. It's a registered charity. And what that means is that anybody who donates to our charity receives a tax deduction, although I'm not giving it a plug today. But I do want to say that the charity does help people in financial need. And we've been blessed over the years to help literally hundreds of people who have been struggling and who, haven't been able to pay for things, small things, maybe sometimes a fridge or their car breaks down or they can't pay a bill, and we get contacted through various sources. People are really surprised that someone is actually able to help them in that sort of fairly quick assessment and give them what they need relatively soon.
And you're also a CEO of Afford Group House Development.
That's right. Yeah, so I've been in the housing business for probably longer than I'd care to remember. I think I stopped thinking about it after 25 years, but I think it's probably closer to 30 years now that I've been in the property game. And, I started off in real estate, selling real estate, and then I owned an office. And I moved into sort of finance for about a half a dozen years, or arranging finance for people buying homes. And then from that led to development, to being in a position to be able to do some of our own developments, such as, house and land packages and working with builders and various road contractors. So it's been an up and down cycle, as property is. But all in all, I feel very blessed as well in that industry.
Yes, and part of your profits go to the charity of I Choose Life.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, so some years are a little more than others, but mostly every year over the past 8 or so years, we've been able to donate a proportion of our income to the charity, and that money, as I mentioned earlier, is used to assist people in need.
I remember hearing that you get such a buzz out of helping people or giving money to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, my journey started on a trip to India, and I went to India and I saw how people lived in India, and they were happy. Their faces were happy, and yet they didn't have anything. And there was a lot of people who were, not only financially struggling, but they were struggling in other ways. Maybe they were orphaned, or they had mental health issues, and there wasn't many people to care for them. So I think God started working in my heart then. I sort of felt that I could do better than what I've been doing, and I remember looking at an image of Jesus, a huge image of Jesus. And when I looked at the image of Jesus, Jesus looked at me and said, "Isn't enough for you? When is enough enough?" And I think it was at that point that I thought, maybe I've got more than I need, and maybe I need to give a bit to others.
Yeah. Wow, you've been a very generous man, and it's inspiring to hear.
Thank you.
And you've, because there's very strong epidemic of ice at the moment in Australia. You've gone through a bit of conversion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so look, I after I was separated in 2002, I think it was. So I was single for a couple of years, and I started going out to bars and places like that and clubs, and I unfortunately did get a taste of that world, not ice but other drugs, and I sort of got to see firsthand of what that was really like and experienced it myself, and only by prayers and the grace of God I was able to fight off the addiction, and God cured me from that. But apart from that, I did sort of witness firsthand how people can get addicted to it and be completely delusional about the use of it, and how it affects them, and how they think they're okay and they think they're in control, but the ice is much stronger than they would care to believe, the impact it has on them.
Yeah, what about other drugs that people say recreational ones, and they say, oh, we can get over it?
Yeah, well, I think like any addiction, there's generally a justification for why people do things. I only drink on the weekends, or I don't drink that often. I only drink once every few weeks. So I don't take drugs that often. This is what people say. I don't take drugs that often. It's only recreational, and I can stop any time I want. I mean, again, people say that, but it's a complete and utter joke. They can't stop, because if they could, they would, because drugs are expensive. They're addictive.
Yes.
They have effects on your mental health position. They bring you up, they bring you down. They do all sorts of things to you that you don't realise what they're doing to you till later.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, especially with the ice epidemic. We probably need to go for a break now. You've been watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us and we'll be back after the break.
Till I feel the breath of the Spirit flowing in me. Blow, blow, till I feel the breath of the Spirit flowing in me.
Hello. Welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is John Hendricks. He is the CEO of a Ford Group Housing Development and the founder of I Choose Life, a charity. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You're talking about drugs and your experience, and how, and I was talking about how people sometimes fool themselves and say, oh, I'm just doing it recreation and I'm fully in control and I'll be able to stop and start when I want.
Yeah, look, absolutely. The first thing I want to say, I don't want to condemn anybody that uses drugs, even if it's recreational or otherwise, because I know the feeling firsthand. But I can definitely say to you that drugs are an addiction, like alcoholism or like gambling, and we constantly seek the next high. That's just what drugs do, because they have a wearing off effect. So our bodies get immune to the fact that they work sometimes and they don't work other times. So what happens is we tend to take more drugs or drink more alcohol to feel that high again. And they can chase the high that they got the very first time, but they never seem to get that high again, because that high only ever came to them once when they've never been on drugs ever before, and it was an incredible euphoric feeling, and they constantly chase it, and then before they know it, it starts to dominate their life. They don't control it anymore, it controls them, and then they work around the drug. Everything that they do in their life works around the drug. About them going out, they'll only go out with people who are other drug users, because if they go out with people who are not drug users, it's not fun for them anymore, it's boring. It's boring. So then that's why they tend to hang around with people who drink a lot of alcohol or take drugs. And again, I'm not judging anyone or condemning anybody. This is not what it's about. What it's about is just understanding how it affects people, and why we call it a drug is because it takes over our life. That's the difference.
That's very, very interesting, and very knowledgeable, because people do wonder about that, and it's good that you said not to condemn people, because sometimes people in the drug community feel judged by others.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's important. Is that there's the first thing I think people need to do is recognise that it's not healthy. Full stop. It's not. It's not normal living. I mean, okay, what is normal living can be questioned. Is normal living getting up for work every day, working and resting, and enjoying yourself on the weekend and going back to work on Monday? Some people will say that's not normal, but we do have a means to an end, and we do need to work. We can't avoid working unless we're unable to work. But even if we're unable to work full time, we could still work part-time. If we're unable to work part-time, we can still donate our time. At least we're busy, we're keeping our mind occupied. But I know when I was involved in that year or two, I wouldn't want to do any of that, because to me that was boring. Because what was exciting was going out with my friends, and it was all about the partying and the high and the drug taking. But that's okay if you can limit it to that. If it just gets limited to having something once every month or something like that. But unfortunately, you can't limit it to that. It's not possible to limit it to that, because with drug abuse is that the body does start to crave it. It's like smoking. Anyone that's ever smoked, again, a lot of people say, oh yeah, but I can stop any time. But they can't stop smoking. If they were honest with themselves, they can't stop smoking.
Yes.
And it's the same with drugs. They can't stop drinking. If they can stop drinking, good luck to them. If they can stop taking drugs, good luck to them. But most of them can't. But unfortunately, a lot of them are not prepared to admit it. I think the first place that they should start is by acknowledging that there is a problem. Yes. And when you acknowledge there's a problem, one, you're recognising it. When you recognise it, you can do something about repairing it.
Yeah.
And when you start repairing it, then you can start working towards, a reconciliation of maybe people that you've offended or hurt or dropped off friends. So I remember having the marriage breakup, then starting with a whole new group of friends. And people said to me, okay, you're on this journey now of meeting new friends, but, and you think this is really exciting, you're meeting new friends and you're starting. He said, but you're going to go through a cycle, and it might take a year or 2 or 3 or 5 or 7, but you'll end out back to where you started. That's what he said. And I said, well, why would I end out back to where I started? I couldn't understand that about what that meant. And he said, well, what that means is that you will end out going through your so-called friends, which are not true friends. You probably won't have any lasting relationships of the people that you go out with or party with. He said, and you'll end out working through them, or they'll work through you in terms of using you, or you use them. And when you finish with them, then you'll grab a whole new set of friends, and then you'll realise there's no substance in the friendships because they're all geared around one thing, and that's just partying. And then you'll be lonely and depressed, which is what happened, and you'll be left on your own in an addicted state, which is exactly what happened. So it's quite sad, and I just want people to know that there is a better life out there for them. There is. There is peace and happiness and joy. And sometimes people think, that's not what I want.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's it's very insightful what you've shared, and I'd love to hear more about it in the next after the break. You've been watching Spirit of Life. We'll be back after the break.
Go till I be but breath of the Spirit flowing in me. Go till I be but breath of the Spirit flowing in me.
Welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is John Hendricks. He is the CEO of a Ford Group Housing Development and the founder of I Choose Life, which is a charity. Welcome back, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very insightful about drugs, and because I've worked over the years with people with drug addictions, and I really like what you said about that they're looking for something, and you've kind of found something that could replace that need to get a higher high, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I think as I mentioned in the previous segment, once there's an acknowledgement that that maybe I do have a problem, or I do have an issue, or is there a better life? And I wanting to say that there is a better life, and the life can be just good, just living a normal life, a happy life, just getting up every day and going to work and being happy, doing what you enjoy. But what prevents us from doing that are things that overpower us. Things that overpower us can be them in themselves, maybe our gregarious personality, or maybe our quietness in personality, or maybe our depressed state. So we tend to enhance those positions by taking things that help us come out of those positions. They make us feel better when we're on something. But we want to be in a normal state, and in a normal state is within our capacity of what our capacity is able to give us, or what our brains and mind and personality and bodies are able to do in our normal state. Because when we're out of state, when we're out of our body state, yeah, it's a temporary high, but it's not pleasurable really, because our bodies are operating abnormally and they're not functioning normally. So for every high there's a down, and when that down comes, it's pretty severe. It's pretty severe, and you're not able to logically decipher between truth and falsehood. So you can't really work out who your true friends are. You can't really work out what you should be doing. Should you be working? Should you be staying home? Should you be, continuing to live like this? So there is a better way. There is a better life, and it's the life that we had been born for. And we've got that, and it's available to us. First, we just need to acknowledge it and seek some help from that. Once we do that, and we start working on that path of maybe forgiving people that we've offended, that maybe we weren't even aware that we offended them. Maybe there's things we did that we weren't, fully coherent about.
Yes.
But maybe speaking to that person and asking them, whilst I was in that state, did there things that I did to offend you? Did I hurt you?
Yes.
Asking for forgiveness. Trying to offer your time up to other people who need help, going to get help yourself, and just trying to be healthy, trying to live a healthy life, walking, swimming, doing some activities, walking in the parks, just enjoy life and be happy with the simple things of life, because there's always a danger that by going to the extreme that you'll tip over the other side, and that tipping over the other side is death, or coming to a point of no return. And we've seen many people who have gone to a point of no return, where they've gone too far and they're brain damaged, or they're paralysed, or they run in front of a car or something, you know what I mean? Because they're not in control of their own state. I guess that's what I'm really trying to say. So even though there's a temporary feeling of euphoria, it really, the downside is 100 times worse than the 1% that you're going to get from feeling good for that, hour.
Yeah, I have a friend who has worked in the prison system. They said that they've seen some ICE people who've been on ICE who because of the brain damage, they're like animals. And it was quite scary, that image that, where they had to almost be tied up because they were like, their brains were gone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so that's scary. But you had also an experience of God's love, and that kind of helped you too?
Yeah, look, I as a child, I had a belief of God. Up until I was about 17, I was experiencing God through school and through youth groups and through going to church with my parents. But after that, I went away from God. I know He was still with me, I realised later, but I really wasn't with Him for a long time. And it wasn't until I cried out for Him in my deepest and darkest moment, a couple of times. And I cried out and I said, God, if you really do exist, help me get out of this situation, please help me. I'm not in a good state. And He answered my call for crying help, He answered it. And I said to Him, I need to meet someone and settle down again. And I have children and I want to live my normal life back again, which is interesting. And then that memory of my friend telling me a couple of years earlier that you'll do the cycle, a full turn cycle.
Wow.
And I was crying out to God, asking Him to just return me to a normal life. And yet here I was 2 years sooner saying I wanted this other style of life, but when I'd experienced it, it really was, the word was, it had no substance to it. It was a self-centered, selfless, selfish life that really gave me very little pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, and look what you're doing now, helping people, who are struggling, and some people who've been in addictions. You've helped support them during difficult times and given them hope. So, it's been very inspiring to hear. So, and I'm sure there are also people out in the audience who want to know, might have some questions, or might want to, support I Choose Life or donate. How can they contact you?
They can contact us through our website, which is ichooselife.org.au, and they can contact us that way. You can email us, or they can hop online, and there's various posts and different ways they can contact us.
Thank you so much for you sharing. You're very, very inspiring. Goodbye, and God bless you. You've been watching Spirit of Life. Join us again next week. Goodbye, and God bless you.